Hey there, guys. Now we're into stage 2, right? That devalue, the beginning of the end. Moving into stage 2 for the one-upmanship. Here's where the first odd or those intense stories from the narc are going to appear. Honestly, mostly typically, and unfortunately, you might all recognize this, based in youth, right? Where they seem to kind of be permanently stuck in some imagined mud, some kind of imagined fantasy land, where they're either the victim or the hero in some far off and kind of unverifiable, highly animated stories. As time passes, these stories will be retold like an old school CD, right? Stuck on repeat. But if you really kind of listen a little bit closely to this, they will also slightly kind of change them up as they go. They're gonna really change a lot of these stories up, but just enough to keep the interest, right? To try to sell them, and even morphing honestly into just outright lies, either from firsthand experience, or that you just know like these things have never occurred. So at first you may kind of correct them to show that you value honesty and you expect it. But it will likely be either kind of laughed off or joked away as fun, or really honestly even as kind of like um, tall tales, right? Due to kind of constant, repeated reprising of the same old, we know, right? Tired drama stories, right? You'll simply kind of grow sick of correcting them and feel honestly like you're criticizing them, which is also kind of the purpose here of that repetition game, those repetition tools. And so that latest victim will not want to kind of embarrass the narc, especially in the beginning, right, over a silly story. And that's really compounded by, frankly, getting sick and tired of the effort to correct such an unimportant tall tale. And also by now, small flags are being noticed by you in other areas. And your attention is kind of being diverted to other growing and seemingly small other things that are kind of cropping up. And so you're going to simply start kind of hyper focusing on the more kind of like obvious and increasing inconsistencies that you're kind of starting to catch on to now, by conserving the pure energy that is needed to kind of repeatedly kind of set the record straight. And here, by the way, is where you're kind of already starting that training to not speak up begins. Secondly, it kind of tamps down the now increasing guilt trips that are coming, those sad faces they like to pull in public, and the resulting kind of pointed looks by publicly speaking up. And so most victims here are simply going to kind of chalk this one up to good old self-blame. What's new, right? And really take over that narc's job for them, do all their work. So they will bit by bit begin to just kind of convince themselves they shouldn't make such a big deal. They really just shouldn't make such a big deal of something so trivial. And wait a tick. There's something I've noticed over here that sounds pretty bad. So I got to focus over here. What's happening over here? So your attention is being moved, right? Besides, narky has been so all attentive and all about you and all about others at this point, right? And really, you shouldn't be petty, so you're going to tell yourself maybe. So everyone deserves a little limelight, you might tell yourself. That's where it starts. So here's also where your self-training to really start making yourself, your voice, your instincts kind of smaller and smaller, and that will kick into kind of autopilot here. And this is now kind of that glue, right? The holding stage for 1 and 2 with the good old Jedi mind trick. So basically there's guiding you to that locked barn, right? Handing you your own reins. Well, they gallop off to those greener pastures. So you're really holding yourself. And so begins your kind of self-erasure, right? So that training. And that's with nary a whimper or even idea that it even began. Here's where the victim is kind of becoming their worst enemy and a jailer of self. By first starting off by beginning to speak less, then dimming down their own stories and making themselves kind of smaller and smaller on their own life stage. But, they will still be used for a public prop by the narc when needed. Basically, really choosing at that moment to, between the strongest of the most prevalent evils around them, to be able to hold on enough energy for this increasing chaos that just keeps going, right? And to simply cut off that least needed appendage for like the whole to survive by just radically kind of conserving that precious energy and those precious resources. And even this kind of seemingly small concession to simply kind of pull away from stopping feeling guilty for putting them on the spot and correcting them like a child becomes an almost kind of a mini relief valve of sorts for you. By the way, correcting them like a child is actually more accurate than I'd like to admit, because really in the most serious and nefarious way, this is exactly the core issue that is at hand here. So, their stuff emotionally frozen, right? Because they're emotionally frozen, their reactions, their behavior just It's frozen in time and it collapses in on itself, resulting really in not being able to even generate their own energy field, and therefore not being able to kind of return it, to push it out in any kind of significant or any kind of meaningful way here. So it's resulting in like a 20, 30, or 4-year-old, 40-year-old really being dependent on other external bodies or people to extract that energy from outside of themselves. And while the body will age, that core being is permanently just encased at that age of absorption and that choice and emotional depth that it did occur at. So you're basically honestly here dealing with a small child who has decided they will be predator, not prey, and only will focus really on getting their own needs met by any means or deceit necessary. And emotionally, they're frozen in that exact moment and age that false ego kind of took control of the body. So typically, and really concerningly here, roughly between biological ages of between 5 and 13 years of age. And what adult that has any character wants to have a physical or deep adult relationship with a child? None I know of. So think of it that way maybe for context here. And so the body itself will continue growing, maturing, physically, but that core self that's kind of steering that moral ship, that was encased long ago by their own decision, by the way, and is essentially kind of hidden deep within. So alternately, as an adult, both inside and out, you can't help but just grow annoyed and tired of correcting them like a child many times over and over, kind of having those same kind of circular conversations on basic decency and acceptable human behavior. And really kind of in the end, you adult up and simply you'll end up picking your battles like you would with a child. So you shrug it off, as you would if it's an actual small child that just maybe is telling like an animated story, right? And we need to keep kind of in the forefront here. You didn't have the full contract in front of you when you signed up to be married or partnered with a lying, self-obsessed child, making this whole farce just null and void in many, many ways. And you certainly did not sign up for purposely being misled and tricked into any false partnerships or deals or anything with anyone, with a deceitful person that's in an adult body, right? With the mind and the emotions of a stunted child. So what you have done is you have assigned adult behavior and maturity onto a body, onto someone who simply does not internally possess them, and they never will, based on faulty information, right, that they gave you, or which just visually being seen. You're then going to probably allow them their moment, right, to spin the latest version of the same old, right, self kind of grandizing fantasies, these stories, right? And it's simply just easier, honestly, to not deal with, especially over kind of the more pressing matters that will begin to start appearing here. They're kind of cropping up, right? And relative, seemingly kind of unimportant stories, right? So here's also where that rubber is going to meet the road, so to speak, kind of here. So, right, your own self-esteem and your voice, and you in essence have hit that training point here by placing your own self in the back seat in deference to the poor narc, slowly but really steadily drowning out your own stories and attention needs that you have as well. Unless, somehow the narc is somehow, and they do this often, inserted themselves as the hero or the victim in your story. Next, you'll notice that if you have a broken arm, they have a broken back. You almost died, well, they died 20 times. If you had COVID, well, they got the bad sniffles 5 years ago, but they almost got COVID once, passing a pasture with some people in it. Things like that. So here's where kind of that one-upmanship game is going to ramp up. It's going to ramp up really, really noticeably, and the proportions will get bigger. So before they kind of listened intently or defended your past wrongs from others, you will now be kind of somehow also included into these made-up stories. Like a party that you've never attended, where they cried and told everyone how much they loved you, or you've done this or that. And it's all really to control this public narrative, right? And it's also to pull you closer publicly towards that trap door. And this progresses, of course, really to those looks they end up giving you, the eye rolling, being spoken over. At this stage, you may even become annoyed and flatly say things like, is there a reason that I am not allowed to speak here? Or is there a reason everything that we talk about or the people we talk to kind of always leads back to you somehow? Here's also where the pre-setup is coming into play. for that silent background smear campaign that eventually gets ran, right? Because they are secretly telling anybody that will listen on both sides how mean or self-absorbed or rude you are. So here's where it's going to play kind of directly into their hands, right? Because when you're still correcting them, it's going to play right into what they were saying. The monkeys and others actually don't realize that 24/7, you're now alone with Narky, and every and all topic and issues, needs, problems are just solely redirected back onto the narcissist, no matter what it is, to the point you yourself finally usually just have enough, right? So if they feel that others maybe know about an illness, an operation, or an issue that you're having, they will actually leave you to your own devices the moment they can in private. But then they'll do something like they'll come home and loudly place monkeys on speakerphone to loudly kind of brag about how well they're taking care of you. Meanwhile, honestly, you might not even have been helped to bathe in 13 days. Well, they had fun, right? Playing mind games with you too, serving you slop when they could remember you were even there, or could tear themselves away from their phone and all this wonderful free time, right? Being on those cells, of course, right? Arranging the latest hookup or dirty deeds. Also, really honestly, in the second stage here is where they are rapidly carving out huge amounts of time. They're taking advantage of it, right? To very publicly focus on side hunts without your annoying truth or annoying you getting in the way, or you actually expecting that ridiculous give and take and that honesty crap. So they are really rapidly cycling through exes, strangers, co-workers, anyone online, and neighbors, whoever, right? Family members. When you are ill, vulnerable, or you are distracted, is their favorite striking time of all, because you are currently not making them look good and you are not being useful to them, either privately or in public. So you're just a broken toy. You're no fun anymore. They will even come home after you've had major surgery, kind of leaving you tucked away for days or weeks on end alone, might not even tell others you've had it, and come up one day and quite flatly tell you, I can't sit up here with you in this room. You depress me. And I wish I was kidding on that one. They will, if it's serious enough for others to know about or find out about, maybe address the basics of your injuries and the basics they have to do, or serious issues that you mentioned may be heard, just to keep up, look good, right? Prop up that empathetic caregiver look. But that's going to happen less and less as well. So they might let you kind of get a serious need or ask out to benefit them, and usually only to also boomerang it back to them within maybe a minute or less. Eventually you will catch on enough to just stop bothering asking them, hoping they'll get it, which they never do, right? Or you'll just stop telling them anything, hoping they'll get it, and they never do, right? And it's just kind of, honestly, it's like talking to a brick wall. They'll also going to throw that reaction of yours into the old smear campaign pot, right? So pay attention, pay particular interest. If you have a fairly, serious injury, or you have a really bad issue, or you're out in public, they're going to feign interest and tell everyone every detail of your problem and your suffering and how much they're helping you, how much they care. Well, honestly, physically, they will ignore your existence at home. Once back in the car or home alone, the toxic self-absorbed behavior is simply going to reset back to self. And always remember, right? It's their public narrative that matters. You have nothing to do with any of this to them. So this seeming kind of re-interest will fade quicker than a quarter in a slot machine in Vegas, because the second the door closes behind you both, that's it. It's resetting when you're kind of out of physical distance from any others. That's what's going to happen. All to kind of manage the almighty public impression, right? Of them being such a caring, wonderful, great catch. But more and more kind of, especially in private, you'll find that they will bring any topic back to them. You can be on your deathbed, including being dismissive over very serious injuries, even kind of saying you're exaggerating, when you have serious or obvious health problems. And if they want to kind of amp up your being such a nut or crazy or the B word, this is also the point they will suggest or arrange a public monkey viewing visit, which they know you can't prepare for, or they will drag you to a public store or someone's house where they secretly know these people, by the way. And they will target this kind of public viewing time when you are very beaten down. Okay, so badly, your weight is next to nothing. You no longer like have even minimum energy for self-grooming or care. You're like jumping at everything. You're suspicious of everybody. You're paranoid from the games they're playing, from the constant lies, from the gaslighting. You just really have no energy left of your own to even keep house, sometimes even work anymore. And you're now kind of understandably very hyper vigilant. And so you're going to appear super irritated and very hyper reactive, right, to those who don't know you or to strangers who they're going to bring you around. And so you're going to be in full fight or flight mode, maybe even losing mounds of hair and desperately in need of just rest, peace, and relaxation. So your overriding need here is simply to begin like conserving your energy, your daily energy, to even have brief moments of recovery time. It will be the exact point, unfortunately, that they will pull a major or a final discard as well. Also be aware in the final curtain call, when they only do their own laundry, cook only their own meals, come back in rage or treat you so badly that you'll start refusing to even be in the same room with them. You'll prearrange to be in other rooms before they get back around you or in your dynamic. And honestly, during the days, they're now going to drop off the map completely. And just the neglect will be they won't even try the old fake true check-ins anymore. So financially, look for them complaining about your own credit, your bank cards. Don't use them, do use them, because either they don't want to be accused of leaving you penniless, they don't want you rightfully asking them for money, or are secretly draining or plan to drain all of your stuff themselves before they arrange either for you to toss them out because of their behavior, or they simply never come back one day. They just don't come back. Another tip here: cancel those cards, reorder new ones that they don't know about, and any supplementary like cards that you may have maybe forgotten about, check into those. Place notes on your applicable credit bureaus. I'm not sure where you're located. I'm in Canada. And change all of those passwords, right, to your social media. Turn off location tracking in your Google, your Chrome, your iCloud, everywhere. And really change your modem, change your iCloud passwords, your cell provider account sign-ins, change it all. They will get into them. They will encourage you to not charge or charge more items to break you or borrow or guilt you into giving them money even to leave, right? The money grab, especially if it's cash, is actually for the side supply and them to have fun with, to spend or move in secretly together. And also, honestly, frankly, they may have already been kind of living with them, but they're lying to the new pony that you're pathetic or you need help, or they can't leave their kids alone with unsteady you. Meanwhile, when they're home with the kids, they control them, mock them, ignore them, whatever, right? And they leave you kind of especially nasty, unnecessary messes. And that's really to keep you exhausted, leave you without fight, finish you off. So, phrasing your very real trauma that's going on in pain as being unbalanced, and that's how it's going to look. And so they place that cherry on the proverbial kind of poisonberry pie, right? By dragging you out, devastated, exhausted, and also unexpectedly they'll just invite monkeys they've been smearing you to over to show off the handiwork, right? And prove their kind of two-faced point at really your lowest or most defeated is when you're going to be dragged into public. They will, of course, frame this public humiliation ritual as them helping poor you. You poor soul, you just needed a change of pace. You just needed some people over. You just needed company. You just needed to get out. And you're completely on edge from the private torture sessions. And it'll perfectly kind of showcase their hard work, right? When you exhibit those reactive abuse responses, which are perfectly normal, by appearing as kind of cold, you've got to turn stuff off, right? You're cranky, you're paranoid, all these things are natural. So what you need at this juncture here is counseling, rest, peace, things like that. Not to be drug out like a show pony or a circus show act for the narcs' amusement or the monkeys. And then to ensure they twist the knife, this is where they will flirt outrageously. I bet you all just went, aha, right? With anyone that they can leave you, or they'll leave you completely up to your own devices after kind of dragging you down your down and out backside all over town, or around those they've already really honestly secretly smeared you to, or they're even having affairs with. So when prior, they'd been basically kind of hiding you, right? Isolating you, all of a sudden you're out, right? Flag. Especially applicable once replacement supply has kind of been targeted and set up. Why? Well, when you're sick, when you're stressed, and you're being kind of tortured for weeks, months, years possibly, you're much more pliable, right? It's like when they can get you hooked on stuff, right? You're more pliable, right? You're going to have a different response, no patience. You're going to snap at things. So these public flirtations really are just kind of a low-hanging fruit if you really think about it. Okay, so we've covered here stage 2, and we're going to go now into the final describe. That's going to be our final one. Stay tuned.